Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right, but something still doesn't feel right? As if life is moving forward on the outside, but inside, something is missing. This is one of the deepest reflections found in the book of Ecclesiastes. Written by Solomon, a man who had access to everything many people spend their entire lives chasing, this book is not about theory. It's about real experience. It shows that it's possible to have wisdom, wealth, and achievements, and still realize that none of these can truly satisfy the heart. But Ecclesiastes is not a book of discouragement. It is a book of awakening. It calls us to see life more clearly, to step out of autopilot, and to pursue what truly matters. Throughout these 15 teachings, you will discover truths that can reshape your thinking, your decisions, and your direction. Before we begin, you're welcome to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you feel led to. And at the end, take a moment to reflect. Which of these teachings spoke most to your heart? Feel free to share it in the comments. Your reflection may be a blessing to someone else here. Now, let's begin. First teaching, everything is temporary. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Ecclesiastes 1:2. This teaching invites us to deeply reflect on the nature of life. Often we dedicate ourselves to pursuing possessions, recognition, and stability, believing that these things will bring lasting satisfaction. However, over time, we begin to realize that everything material and earthly is temporary. The author of Ecclesiastes is not diminishing life, but revealing that without God, everything loses its true meaning. This realization should not lead to discouragement, but to awareness. We were created for something greater than what our eyes can see. When we place our hope only in the things of this world, we inevitably face emptiness and frustration. Therefore, this teaching calls us to shift our focus and seek what is eternal. The true purpose of life is found in living for God, building a relationship with Him, and aligning our choices with His will, because only that will last forever. Second teaching, there is a time for everything. To everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven. Ecclesiastes 3:1. Not everything happens when we want it to, and this teaching reminds us of that truth. Life does not follow our timing, but God's perfect timing. Often we become anxious, seeking quick answers or immediate results, yet God works through processes. There are seasons that feel slow or difficult, but each one carries a purpose beyond what we can see. There are moments of quiet growth, waiting, learning, and also harvest. When we try to force situations, we often end up frustrated because we step outside the right timing. This teaching invites us to rest in God's sovereignty and trust that He knows what He is doing in every season. As we learn to wait with faith, we develop spiritual maturity and emotional balance. In this way, we are able to live each phase with greater peace, understanding that everything is being guided by God's hands at the right time. Third teaching, speak with wisdom before God. Do not be quick with your mouth, and do not let your heart rush to utter anything before God. God is in heaven, and you are on earth, so let your words be few. Ecclesiastes 5:2. This teaching invites us to develop a posture of reverence, wisdom, and awareness before God. Often, we approach Him in haste, speaking without reflection, making promises, or expressing empty words. However, this passage reminds us of God's greatness and our human limitation. He is in heaven, sovereign and holy, while we are on earth, completely dependent on His grace. Because of this, we should speak with care, avoiding impulsiveness and superficiality. More than many words, God values a sincere and attentive heart. This teaching also applies to our daily lives, as careless words can cause wounds and regret. When we learn to speak less and listen more, we grow in wisdom and self-control. In this way, our words begin to reflect respect, maturity, and a genuine relationship with God, grounded in sincerity, humility, and reverence. Fourth teaching, control your anger. Do not be quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger rests in the bosom of fools. Ecclesiastes 7:9. The way we respond to situations reveals a lot about our character. This teaching warns us about the danger of acting impulsively when we are angry. When not controlled, anger can lead to hasty decisions, harsh words, and actions we may later regret. The verse shows that being quick to anger is a sign of a lack of wisdom. This does not mean we will never feel anger, but that we must learn to manage it with maturity. God calls us to self-control, patience, and reflection before reacting. When we control our anger, we avoid unnecessary conflicts and preserve our relationships. We also develop emotional and spiritual balance. This teaching invites us to slow down, take a breath, and think before we act. In doing so, our actions begin to reflect wisdom, peace, and a heart aligned with God. Fifth teaching, do not live trapped in the past. Do not say, "Why were the former days better than these?" For you do not inquire wisely concerning this. Ecclesiastes 7:10. This teaching warns us about the danger of constantly looking back with excessive nostalgia. Many times we idealize the past, forgetting that it also had its challenges, and we begin to undervalue the present. This mindset prevents us from moving forward and from seeing the opportunities God is placing before us today. When not controlled, nostalgia can lead to dissatisfaction, comparison, and even discouragement. The verse teaches us that this attitude is not wise because it keeps us stuck in what has already passed and distances us from what God still wants to do. God works in the present, and it is in today that He shapes us, teaches us, and leads us. This teaching invites us to value the present moment, trust in God's plans, and move forward with faith. When we put the past in its proper place, we are able to live with greater hope, gratitude, and purpose. Sixth teaching, wisdom provides protection. For wisdom is a defense, as money is a defense, but the excellence of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to those who have it. Ecclesiastes 7:12. Wisdom is one of the greatest protections a person can have in life. This teaching shows us that just as money can offer a certain level of security, wisdom goes even further. It protects not only outwardly, but also inwardly. Wisdom guards us from wrong decisions, dangerous paths, and impulsive choices. While material resources may fade, wisdom remains and continues to guide our steps. The passage emphasizes that wisdom not only protects, but also gives life, bringing direction, balance, and discernment. When we seek wisdom, we begin to see situations more clearly and act with greater prudence. This teaching invites us to value the knowledge that comes from God, as it sustains, guides, and strengthens us in every area of life. Living with wisdom means living with security, purpose, and a life that continues to flourish even in the midst of challenges. Seventh teaching: avoid extremes. Do not be overly righteous, nor be overly wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Do not be overly wicked, nor be foolish. Why should you die before your time? Ecclesiastes 7:16-17. This teaching warns us about the danger of extremes in life. Many people believe that the more extreme they are, the better it will be. But this passage shows that both excess and lack can be harmful. Being overly righteous can reflect pride, rigidity, and a judgmental attitude, while wickedness leads to destruction. God calls us to a balanced life, guided by wisdom rather than exaggeration. Balance is a mark of spiritual maturity, as it helps us act with discernment in every situation. This teaching invites us to avoid impulsive attitudes, radical behavior, and unbalanced choices. Instead, we are called to pursue a centered, humble life that is sensitive to God's guidance. When we live with balance, we avoid extreme mistakes and walk with greater stability, reflecting a healthy, practical faith aligned with God's principles. Eighth teaching: we will not always understand everything. Then I saw all the work of God, that a man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. Though a man labors to discover it, he will not find it. Moreover, even if a wise man claims to know, he cannot fully comprehend it. Ecclesiastes 8:17. This teaching reminds us of the limits of human understanding in contrast to the greatness of God. No matter how much we seek answers, there are things we will not fully understand. Often, we want explanations for everything, especially in difficult moments. But God has not called us to understand everything. He has called us to trust. The human mind is limited, but God sees the whole picture. When we try to control or understand every detail, we may become frustrated and even lose our peace. This teaching invites us to rest in God's sovereignty, recognizing that He is in control even when we do not understand. True faith does not depend on having all the answers, but on trusting who God is. In this way, we learn to walk with confidence even in uncertainty, knowing that God leads all things with perfect wisdom. Ninth teaching: do not delay what needs to be done today. Whatever your hand finds to do it with your might, for there is no work or device or knowledge or wisdom in the grave where you are going. Ecclesiastes 9:10. This verse invites us to recognize the value of the present moment. When it says, "Whatever your hand finds to do," it reminds us not to overlook the simple opportunities of daily life, because they are what shape our journey. The phrase, "do it with your might," shows that God is not expecting perfection but dedication. He desires that we give our best with what we have today. The final part of the verse reminds us that time is limited, and there will come a moment when we will no longer be able to act or accomplish anything. This awakens us to stop postponing important decisions. This teaching calls us to live with responsibility, making the most of every opportunity. In this way, each day becomes a real chance to act with purpose, grow, and honor God through intentional and meaningful actions. 10th teaching: wisdom makes effort effective. If the axe is dull and its edge unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success. Ecclesiastes 10:10. Often exhaustion does not come from the amount of work, but from a lack of direction. There are times when we keep pushing harder without realizing that the problem lies in how we are doing things. This teaching reveals that it is not enough to try harder. We need to make adjustments. The image of a dull axe represents someone wasting energy because they have not taken time to prepare or improve. In life, this happens when we repeat the same mistakes without seeking growth or learning. Wisdom becomes the guide that shows a more efficient and balanced way forward. It teaches us to think before acting and to correct before insisting. When we apply this, our efforts become lighter and more productive. Instead of just struggling, we begin to move forward with clarity, purpose, and more consistent results. 11th teaching: words can build or destroy. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the lips of a fool consume him. Ecclesiastes 10:12. Words carry great power. They can bring life or cause destruction. This teaching shows that a wise person speaks with grace, meaning with care, sensitivity, and the intention to build others up. Their words bring peace, guidance, and encouragement. On the other hand, a fool speaks without thinking, and this often turns against them. Careless words can damage relationships, create conflict, and lead to regret. The verse reveals that what we say has direct consequences, both for others and for ourselves. This teaching invites us to think before we speak and to use our words with responsibility. When we cultivate wisdom, our speech begins to reflect balance and maturity. In this way, what we say becomes a source of peace rather than destruction. 12th teaching: sow today to reap in the future. Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it again. Ecclesiastes 11:1. This verse teaches us to act with faith and perseverance, even when we do not see immediate results. Casting your bread upon the waters represents doing good, investing time, effort, and resources without visible guarantees at the moment. Often, we want quick returns, but God works through processes that take time. Not everything we do today will bring immediate reward, but that does not mean it was meaningless. This teaching calls us not to give up on doing what is right, even when it seems like nothing is happening. Life is made of seeds, and every action carries a result that will be revealed at the right time. When we live with this understanding, we stop acting only for immediate results and begin to trust in God's faithfulness. In this way, we learn to sow consistently, knowing that in due time the harvest will come. 13th teaching: there are things we cannot control. If the clouds are full, they pour out rain upon the earth, and if a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it shall lie. Ecclesiastes 11:3. Not everything in life depends on our decisions or efforts. This teaching shows us that there are events that follow their own course, regardless of what we do. Just as the rain falls naturally and a tree remains where it has fallen, there are situations that simply happen and cannot be reversed. Often we want to control everything, anticipate problems, and guarantee outcomes, but that is not possible. When we try to do so, we end up overwhelmed and anxious. This verse invites us to accept our limits and trust in God's sovereignty. He is in control even of the things we do not understand. In this way, we learn to live with greater peace, doing what is within our reach and placing the rest in God's hands. 14th teaching: those who wait for the perfect moment never act. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. Ecclesiastes 11:4. There is a silent risk in always waiting for the perfect moment. This verse shows that those who are constantly focused on conditions never take action. A farmer who waits for perfect weather never plants and therefore never harvests. The same happens in life. When we seek total certainty, we end up postponing important decisions. There will always be something uncertain, some risk, or something that doesn't feel ideal. This teaching calls us to take action, even with limitations. It is not about acting without thinking, but about not allowing fear to paralyze us. God gives us opportunities in the present, and it is up to us to use them wisely. By taking the first step, even in uncertainty, we begin the journey toward growth, maturity, and living the purpose God has prepared for us. 15th teaching: God's ways are beyond our understanding. As you do not know the path of the wind, or how the bones are formed in the womb of a pregnant woman, so you do not know the works of God, who makes all things. Ecclesiastes 11:5. Not everything God does can be explained by human logic. This verse shows that there are deep and invisible processes taking place that we cannot fully comprehend. Just as we do not see the wind but feel its effects, and we cannot follow every detail of how life is formed, we also cannot fully understand how God works. Often we seek immediate answers, but God operates beyond what we can see. This teaching calls us to trust, even when there are no clear explanations. True faith does not depend on understanding everything, but on trusting who God is. When we accept this, we find rest. In this way, we learn to walk with confidence, even in the midst of mystery, knowing that God continues to work with perfect wisdom in all things. As we come to the end of these 15 teachings from Ecclesiastes, you may have realized something important. Life doesn't need to be lived in a rush, under pressure, or in a constant attempt to prove something. Often, what we lack is not more effort, but more direction. Ecclesiastes teaches us to pause, reflect, and see things more clearly. It reminds us that what truly sustains life is not found in external things, but in a heart aligned with God. These teachings are like a course correction, an invitation to live with more peace, awareness, and purpose. Do not ignore what touched your heart today. Sometimes a simple decision can change your entire path. And remember, God is not finished writing your story. Thank you so much for staying until the end of this video. May God richly bless your life, illuminate your path, and guide every decision with wisdom. Stay strong, walking in faith and trusting in God's care. And see you in the next video.